Power.
Thank you.
Very good. Huh?
So I'm going to start with what we do in Australia, which is we acknowledge the traditional custodians, and it is an acknowledgement country. So I acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet today, the Gadigal people. They have been, they are custodians of the land, the water and the seas. I recognise the continuing connection and resilience of their culture, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging. So welcome, or in Australia, as we colloquially say, g'day. G'day. So what I'm going to do today, because this is on the basis of 20 years working at executive level, thank you very much, executive level, where realistically speaking, I don't see many of me and you, particularly in Australia, in senior positions, both from a public service perspective or the civil service, or indeed in politics. And it's very difficult to actually have a voice, as we all know, if you don't have a voice and a presence at the decision-making table. So humour me here for a moment, people. Tell me, how many mayors do we have in this room? Hands up. Mayors. One. Come on, I know there's a few more of you. Come on, don't be shy. Yeah. So do you realise that we have more mayors in this room than we do in Australia? Because we have a big fat zero. So how many politicians do you know in your home country, both in the Philippines and your adopted country, that are Filipinos or Filipinos? So there are zip in Australia. Okay, so and the amazing thing is that there is 407,000 Filipino Australians as of the census of 2021. Right, so if you think about it, 407,000. So to quote a very famous Australian ad, and I'm not going to swear, so you can fill in the missing gaps. We need to be seen, we need to be heard, and we need to disrupt the comfortable beigeness that sits around us in Australia. Yeah? Because we absolutely matter, and if we're not at that table, then our voices aren't heard, and all of these amazing projects that we've been talking about today, we won't see even a glimmer of that in Australia. So we're the 5th largest diaspora in this great country, okay? And we are the 3rd largest Asian Australian immigrant group. Now, to put it in context, because Sydney is very lucky because there are many Filipino Australians here, and then followed by Melbourne. And then you've got Brisbane and Perth and Adelaide, and then my hometown of Hobart, which is in Tasmania, which is the last stop before Antarctica, just in case you were wondering. There is 3,400 of us in Tasmania. So technically speaking, given the fact that, you know, in Tasmania we're half a degree of separation, I should know every single one. So what do we need to do? We need to change, right? We need to see more representation at local government, state government, and definitely at the federal government level. Because, as I say, empowerment is about I see you and I hear you, right? And speaking as somebody who has worked in politics at a state and federal level as senior advisor and chief of staff, and I have lobbied at a national level, and I have sat at national tables and made pretty groundbreaking policy. But if I don't have my colleagues and my sisters at that table, then I am a lone voice. So, can we do this? Well, you know, I'm always of the opinion that when somebody tells me no, then quite frankly, I swear a bit and I prove them wrong. So, I actually think we can, right? And one of those ways is actually ensuring that we are hardwired into the political system, because everything we do is sheer politics. My goodness, that's come around so quickly.
3 more minutes.
Yep. Can I have at least 1.5 minutes taken off? Well, added because of my, thank you, acknowledgement to country.
No worries.
Negotiating skills. So, one of the things we need to do is we will need to work with political parties. Now, in Australia, just really quickly, there are, well, at least in my home state, there are 2 major political parties: Labor, Liberal, Tory, Labor, and there are independents and there are Greens. So part of the work that I've currently been doing, because it's part of my job anyway, is to actually start to get champions for change, right? And I'm agnostic as to what gender those champions of change are, quite frankly. Because what I want them to do is mentor Filipinas into the system. How? So, just going to run through that. Change to support local Filipinas to come to the table using individual networks across the political spectrum. Social media channels to educate, inspire and support. And partnerships. So my ask includes all of you. And it's already started. So here's a time frame. So I love KPIs, because KPIs are one of those things that whiz past you at each point. So you'll be able to test me in San Fran as to whether I've actually made this by the 12-month period. But the workshops are starting to be structured, and the conversations have already started with Labor and Liberal. And I know Cheryl has an interesting reputation. However, this is so very true, right? Because for every female we bring to the table, right, it changes the discourse. It shakes up the blokes, and it shakes up, dare I say it, the skippies, which are the white Australians. Apologies to Rob behind. So basically, at the end of the day, right, the ask I have of you is that you send me as much information and as much learnings as you have in your relevant fields, because obviously the conversations that you have and the learnings that you bring, there are always little nuggets. But most importantly, absolutely, for every leadership course I ever take or address, the challenge that I put out to every single female is you take one to the table, because you are executives in your own right. One to the table. Because if you bring one to the table, then it makes my job so much easier getting political empowerment, because I can actually demonstrate that FWN actually does the walk and the talk at the same time. And that bell did not ring a second
Got
time.
30 seconds.
Have I?
30 seconds.
30 seconds. Right. So the other great thing is having 2 other Australians in the audience. So we've got Victoria and we've got Michelle. Now, the other thing that you will learn about our culture is that we are pretty fast and loose in terms of how we push the gauntlet. We do flatten our vowels quite a bit. But we are an egalitarian society. However, we're learning in the main very slowly in terms of embracing the diversity that's in our community. And it really is true that if you are the only Filipina Australian at the table, and you bring your mother's culture to the table and you bring your Australian culture to the table, it's pretty lonely. So I actually need more sisters at the table. It certainly helps my job in terms of lobbying for change. So the ask is, bring one to the decision-making table. Just one, each of you. Thanks.
Well, yeah, 30 seconds left. Thank you so much. And now we